Do your fire effects never feel quite hot enough? Are your OSL light sources just not glowing as much as they should be? Maybe you've seen a step-by-step process on how to paint plasma glow or energy weapons, but for some reason, it's just not quite hitting. Well, in this video, we're gonna look at 3 rules for painting fire that are guaranteed to make your flames glow if you follow them correctly. These really do apply to all glow effects, and it's gonna vary slightly based on the shapes that you're working with, and fire is probably the most dynamic of them all. Stick around to the end for a bonus that could actually ruin your glow, even if you hit on all these other categories. Rule number 1 is we need brightness. You can't make something glow unless it's bright. This is why it's really important to use pure white when you paint your flames or other glow effects. You want to make sure you get solid coverage, and that might mean applying the white several times to the surface if it has a bit of transparency. The brighter that you get this initial layer, the brighter the color layer on top will be. The white acts as a reflective surface underneath your color layer, and that will improve its vibrancy, especially if you're working with transparent paints. And you might be thinking, how important is this really? Especially if we're gonna be painting other darker colors on top. Well, this is true, and it's most important to make sure that you get that pure white where the fire or glow is the hottest. And in this case, it's gonna be near the core of our flame. So truthfully, you could start with a darker color base coat. As long as you pick out the hot spots in pure white, you're gonna be able to create that intensity where it matters most. Rule number 2 is that you have to use high saturation colors. Saturation is all about how intense a color is. And the lower the saturation of the color, the closer that it is to gray. So by maximizing brightness and maximizing the saturation of the color that we use over top, we create the most intensity. Now, the tricky thing about this is that it's really difficult to find super saturated colors in hobby paints. Most paints have some degree of white added to them to improve their coverage. Now, artist paints, like these golden fluid acrylics, will give you access to much more saturated colors. However, oftentimes these will also be more transparent, and so they're more suitable for a glazing approach rather than as a base coat, because it will take a few passes to get good coverage over your white. And the process can feel a little bit messy if you're not used to it. Another challenge of these artist paints is that many of these saturated colors are also very glossy, giving you a reflective surface that may make it difficult to see your details, especially as you're painting. And since we're trying to be intentional with where our hot spots appear on our flames, the gloss ends up being a bit distracting. Now, there are things like matte mediums that can help, or matte varnishes that will eliminate the glossy surfaces if you choose to use the artist paints. All that being said, you can certainly get away with using hobby paints too. Just make sure that you're choosing colors that are more saturated than not. The third rule is that you need to create a hue transition. Brightness and saturation set up the foundation for intensity, but the hue shift is what sells the heat. Fire doesn't just glow because it's bright orange, it glows because it transitions through colors in a way that our brains associate with temperature. Now, at the hottest point of a flame, the color is very close to white or a pale yellow, and then as the temperature drops, it moves through yellow, orange, red, and eventually into darker, desaturated tones at the tips. If your fire is just one single hue, you get less of a sense of energy and motion, and the glow can sometimes feel flat. Now, you also don't need a dozen colors to do this well. A simple progression from white to yellow to orange, or yellow to orange to red, is more than enough as long as you devote enough surface area to each step. What matters is that the viewer can read the temperature shift instantly, and it's especially important if you're painting object source light, because the central hot spot of the flame gives context to where the light is emanating from. Now, this concept is really easy to adapt to other colors too. You just need to make sure that you're choosing colors that are adjacent to each other on the color wheel, and that your hotter colors for the center of your glow should always move towards yellow. There's another trick you can do to turn up the heat a little bit more, and that is to sneak in a contrasting color into your brightest spots. And I do this a lot when I'm painting regular fire, and instead of using an orangey yellow for my hot spots, I'll glaze in a greenish yellow instead. And this just adds a further pop of contrast because the green will play off of the reds in the cooler sections of your fire, and it will make that center look even hotter. If you ever use fluorescent paints, you'll notice that most of the yellows are slightly greenish, which is why they work so well for this type of hot glow. Now, even if you follow all the previous steps perfectly, it all falls apart if you don't give it the right context. In order for fire to glow, you need darkness around it. So there are a bunch of things that we need to take into account. First of all, the color of your miniature. If you've got all light tones or white fabric and armor, the fire is going to look a lot less bright next to it, and it's going to be harder to sell any sort of OSL on top of it. If your base has too many light tones, your fire is going to get lost in the noise. So you want to avoid highlighting things too brightly on bases with fire and leave darker tones on all the non-glowy elements of your scene to establish that contrast. And finally, any photos or videos you take will sell the glow effect much more potently on a dark background versus a light background. Again, it all comes back to contrast. So if your flame or other glowy thing is the only bright point in the scene, chances are it's gonna stand out. And if there's too much brightness around it, it's much more likely that it's gonna get lost in the light, or at least its strength is gonna get greatly diminished. So there we have it, 3 rules that are sure to get those flames glowing on your next hot painting adventure. And remember, these concepts apply to all light sources and heat sources, and I encourage you to give it a try with some different colors to see if you can find some fun hue transitions. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you found this helpful, and share it with a friend who's looking to amp up their glow effects. Until next time, my friends, go make it epic. Yo. Once again.